Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today by asking you to just picture your last week of eating.
Okay.
Maybe you had sushi on Tuesday, or grabbed a sandwich on Thursday, or maybe you did that thing where you're like, I'm going to be healthy, and you cooked a nice salmon fillet for dinner.
Uh,
If you live in Europe, or really anywhere with a decent grocery store, the odds are pretty high that salmon was in at least one of those meals.
oh, it's become the default fish, hasn't it? I mean,
Yes.
it's just ubiquitous.
It totally is. It's the new chicken of the sea. But here's the thing that really struck me when we started digging into this. When I buy that fillet, I have this movie playing in my head.
Right.
I see a rushing river, Scotland or Alaska, cold, crystal clear water,
Mhm.
a silvery fish leaping upstream. It feels wild,
Yeah.
natural.
That is the romantic image. And honestly, the marketing departments for these huge seafood companies have done an incredible job keeping that exact image alive in your brain.
Right. But today, we are going to dismantle that image. We're doing a deep dive into a report called The Hidden Cost of Salmon Farming, and we're going to look at the reality of what actually ends up on our plates.
And spoiler alert, it is not a nature documentary.
No, it's an industrial story.
It is. The mission for this deep dive is really to look beneath the surface, literally and figuratively. We need to understand that the salmon industry isn't about catching fish anymore. It's about, well, manufacturing them. And that shift has come with a price tag that nature is paying.
So let's start with that basic reality check. If I walk into a supermarket and pick up a pack of smoked salmon, where did that fish come from, statistically speaking?
Well, unless the packaging screams wild caught and usually has a much higher price to go with it, it's almost certainly not from a river.
Not at all.
The data is just so clear. The vast majority of salmon eaten today is farmed. We're talking about Atlantic salmon that has spent its entire life in captivity.
Okay, so the river is a myth. But I want to understand why this happened. I mean, why so aggressively? We have oceans full of fish. Why did we have to start farming them on this kind of massive scale?
It's that classic collision of, biology and economics. If you look at the history, wild salmon populations have been in a nosedive for decades. The report makes it clear this is basically a hangover from years and years of just relentless overfishing.
We just took too many.
We took too many too fast. We treated the ocean like this, an unlimited vending machine. Eventually, the machine just ran out of stock.
So the wild populations crashed because we couldn't control our appetite.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. Our appetite didn't crash. Demand for salmon just skyrocketed. It was marketed as this heart-healthy omega-3 superfood.
Right.
So you have crashing supply and soaring demand. The only way to bridge that gap was to industrialize it, to grow them like we grow corn or cattle.
And we're not talking about a few guys with a pond in their backyard here.
Oh, far from it. This is a multi-billion-dollar global industry.
Right.
I mean, the report puts a huge spotlight on Norway as the titan here, but it's also Scotland, Chile, Canada. These are massive operations.
This brings up something I found so interesting in the reading. There's this paradox at the heart of why farming even started. It was sort of pitched as the green solution, wasn't it?
That was the initial sales pitch, yes.
Yeah.
The argument was, hey, let's stop hunting wild fish to extinction. If we farm them, we can let the wild stocks recover. On the surface, it sounds like a conservationist's dream.
Yeah, on paper that makes perfect sense. We farm cows so we don't have to go out and hunt bison.
Precisely.
Right.
But the deep dive reveals the big but. While farming solved the supply issue, we now have cheap salmon everywhere. It just created this completely new category of ecological problems.
So we didn't solve the problem.
We just relocated it. We changed its nature. We basically traded overfishing for industrial pollution and, well, biological hazards.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics of that. When we say salmon farm, I think people might picture like a big tank on land, a high-tech aquarium or something. But that's not what we're talking about, is it?
In some cases, yes, there are some land-based systems, but the vast majority of the industry, and what this report focuses on, uses what they call open cages in the sea.
Describe that for me. What does an open cage farm actually look like?
Okay, so picture a series of these massive plastic rings just floating on the surface of a fjord or a bay, and then hanging down from those rings are these huge nets, creating a pen that goes deep into the water.
A pen in the ocean.
Pen in the ocean, filled with thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of fish, all packed together.
Okay, but the key word there is net.
Right. It's porous. The seawater flows freely in and out. It is not a closed loop. It's not sealed off. The farm is in the ecosystem.
So if I'm understanding this right, if the water is flowing in and out, then anything the fish produce, waste, leftover food, whatever, that doesn't stay in the pen either.
That is the fundamental design flaw that the report just hammers home again and again. Because these cages are open, there is zero containment for waste. And when you have that many animals in one spot, the volume of waste is just staggering.
Let's break down that waste. We're not talking about a little fish poop.
No, we are talking about sewage on an industrial scale. The report lists three main pollutants. So first, you have the feces, which is full of nitrogen and phosphorus. Second, you've got uneaten food pellets that sink and rot. And third, you have chemical runoff.
I remember reading a comparison somewhere between a salmon farm and a human town. Is that fair?
It is, actually. A medium-sized salmon farm can produce the same amount of sewage waste as a town of, say, 10 to 20,000 people. Now, just imagine a town that size dumping all of its raw, untreated sewage directly into the local harbor.
That's the part that gets me. If a town did that, if a pig farm on land just pointed a pipe at the river and opened a valve, they would be shut down in a heartbeat.
Oh, immediately. There'd be lawsuits, there'd be protests. On land, we have strict rules about containment. You have to treat your waste. But because this is in the ocean, the industry has historically relied on this idea of dilution.
The solution to pollution is dilution.
That's the old saying. But the report argues that logic is failing. When you pack that much biomass into a single fjord, the ocean can't flush it out fast enough. You get this nutrient overloading, which leads to algal blooms that suck all the oxygen out of the water.
Killing other things outside the cage.
Exactly. You're changing the chemistry of the local ocean.
So the pristine waters, we imagine, are basically a toilet for industrial livestock. Okay, I want to pivot from the water to the fish. Because if the water is that dirty, what is life like for the salmon inside the net?
And this is where the story gets even darker, especially for animal welfare. The report uses the phrase crowded cages, and that density is the root of so much suffering.
Because disease spreads faster.
It's the perfect breeding ground for disease and for parasites.
And the parasite the report really highlights is sea lice. Now, most people, I think, hear lice and they think of, elementary school. It's itchy, embarrassing, but not life-threatening.
This is very, very different. We're talking about a marine crustacean. In the wild, a salmon might pick up one or two, and it's a nuisance. But in a farm, it's a super spreader event. The population just explodes.
Okay, so what does a sea louse actually do to a salmon?
It grazes on them. The louse attaches to the outside of the fish, and it eats the protective mucus layer, then the skin, and eventually the blood.
It eats the skin.
Yes. When an infestation is bad, you can see fish with these horrible lesions, open wounds. They're essentially being eaten alive. The report notes that for young salmon, it's often lethal.
That's a horrific image, like zombie fish. So obviously the farmers can't just let their stock die. They have to do something.
Right. They can't sell fish covered in sores. So they declare war on the lice. And this loops us right back to that pollution cocktail. To kill the lice, the industry often has to use really strong chemical treatments, pesticides basically.
Which they just dump into the water.
Well, they bathe the fish in it, or they put it in the feed. But remember, open cages.
So it all leaks out.
Those chemicals don't know where the net ends. They drift out. And unfortunately, crustaceans are all related. So a chemical designed to kill a parasitic louse can also be lethal to the shrimp and crabs and lobsters living on the seafloor nearby.
So it's collateral damage. We are, nuking the local ecosystem to save the farm fish from a problem that the farm created in the first place.
It's a vicious feedback loop. You crowd the fish, you get lice, you use chemicals, the lice develop resistance, so you have to use stronger chemicals, and you do more damage to the environment. We're stuck in this chemical arms race with a parasite.
This all feels like such a massive disconnect. We've got sewage, we've got parasites eating skin, pesticides killing lobsters, and yet when I'm at the supermarket, it all looks so clean. Pink, shiny, on a nice bed of ice. Why isn't this on the news every night? Why isn't there more outrage?
And this brings us to what the report calls the visibility problem, or the visibility gap. It's a fascinating psychological point. Critics argue that the only reason any of this is tolerated is because it all happens underwater.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Literally.
Yeah.
The surface of the water acts as a barrier to our empathy, to our scrutiny. You can't see how crowded the fish are from the shore. You can't see the lice latching onto them. You can't see the waste piling up on the seafloor.
That makes so much sense. I'm thinking about your comparison to land farming. If I drove past a cow pasture and I saw thousands of cows crammed into a muddy pen, bleeding from open sores, standing in their own filth.
You'd stop the car, you'd take a video, it would be viral on social media in an hour, there'd be boycotts.
Yeah.
But because a salmon farm just looks like a few peaceful rings floating in a beautiful fjord, we just assume everything's fine. The suffering is hidden by the medium itself.
The ocean is the ultimate PR shield.
It really is. And the industry benefits from that. The report suggests this invisibility is a key reason why regulation has been, slower than it should be. We just don't have that same visceral reaction to underwater suffering.
So we have painted a pretty grim picture here, and I'm guessing a lot of listeners are looking at their freezer with a bit of suspicion right now. But is it all bad? Are all farms a disaster zone?
No, and that's important. The report does offer some nuance. You can't paint the whole industry with one broad brush. There are farmers trying to innovate, testing closed containment systems, moving farms further offshore, and some farms definitely follow higher standards than others.
Okay, so as a consumer, how do I find those good farms? I see labels on the packaging, that ASC logo, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, that little turquoise check mark.
Yes, the ASC is the big one. And this is where we have to be really careful as consumers. That label is a tool. It certifies that a farm has met certain criteria on environmental impact, on feed, on disease management.
So if I see that logo, I can relax. It means the fish is eco-friendly.
Well, hold on. This is where the report issues a really strong warning. Experts point out that a label is a mitigation. It's not a guarantee of perfection.
What do you mean by that?
Well, getting that stamp doesn't mean the farm has zero impact. It doesn't mean they're not using open cages. It just means they're managing the damage better than the worst offenders.
Right.
So they might have limits on how many lights are allowed or how much chemical they can use. But they're still using the open cage system. They're still relying on the ocean to deal with their waste.
So it's less bad, but not necessarily good.
That's a very fair way to put it. It's a harm reduction strategy.
Right.
The criticism is that these labels can sometimes create a halo effect, making us feel like we're saving the planet,
Right.
when really we're just supporting a slightly more regulated version of a flawed system.
It's almost greenwashing.
Some critics would absolutely say yes, others would say it's a necessary step. But the takeaway for you listening is, don't assume the label magically fixes the fundamental problems of overcrowding and pollution we've been talking about. It just puts a cap on them.
It really complicates just going grocery shopping. You realize you're not just buying dinner, you're buying into an entire system.
You are. Every dollar is a vote for how we produce our food. And right now, the vote is overwhelmingly in it for these industrial open net systems because they're cheap.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this. We started with the dream of the wild river, but the reality is this massive industrial machine that we've engineered to replace it.
A machine that produces a ton of cheap protein, yes, but at the cost of local ecosystems.
We've learned that the open cage is the sort of villain of the design, letting all that sewage and chemicals flow right into the ocean. And we learned about the welfare nightmare of sea lice, those parasites eating the fish alive.
And the chemical arms race farmers are fighting against them. And of course, the fact that we tolerate this, mainly because we can't see it, the water hides the mess.
And finally, that the labels we trust, like ASC, are helpful, but they're not a magic wand. They don't turn an industrial farm into a nature preserve.
Exactly right. It's a complex web of biology, economics, and ethics.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought, something from the end of the report that really stuck with me. And it goes back to that idea of visibility.
The visibility gap.
Right. We often pride ourselves on being ethical consumers. We buy free-range eggs, we try to avoid sweatshop clothing. But this deep dive makes me wonder, how much of our morality is based on what's just right in front of our faces?
That is the provocative question, isn't it?
If the ocean were transparent, if you could stand on the shore and see the lice, see the lesions, see that cloud of waste drifting into the bay, would we still eat that salmon? Or does the water just give us enough convenient ignorance to enjoy our sushi in peace?
I think if we could see it, the industry would look very, very different tomorrow. I'm sure of it.
Something to chew on, literally and figuratively. Thanks for helping us unpack this murky topic today.
Always a pleasure to dive in.
And thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.